in a good position.
How are you? Good? You found coffee?
I got two.
Yeah, where'd you?
Very, very hot. It's right out the street across.
Oh, is it? Missed it.
Yeah, I'm just going to sit next to it.
Well, I don't know what's
So, first time here, so it's interesting show so far. Trade show looks amazing. I just don't know when it starts.
We haven't been since the last set up.
Do you know when it starts? I did a walk around anyways with some people were there, so I got some connections, so it's good. Signature by Air Canada, Porter Airlines, I haven't talked to them, Shangri-La, hardcover book, Plaza Premium, they have a VIP experience to get you in the airport on all ways or something. Plaza Premium? Plaza Premium. Yeah, they also have a group. It's global. It's amazing. Yeah, I was surprised. So it's education. So they want to deal with the tip. We're into the tip gift bags. So they want to deal with us. So that's kind of cool. So it'd be fun. Working. Connections. That's why I like conferences, face-to-face. It's so much. People don't answer email. They meet you first, you follow.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the GBTA. My name is Teresa Mann, and I'm a volunteer on the GBTA Transportation Committee. They told me they were going to heckle me. I have to admit, I was very impressed with the bios and the responsibilities of our panelists today. Mitch Coburn, raise your hands, everyone. As manager, terminal operations, Mitchell is responsible for the safe day-to-day operations of the terminal building and apron area of the BBTCA. He is responsible for collaborating and working alongside all BBTCA stakeholders such as Ports Toronto, Porter Airlines, Air Canada, and managing various on-site vendors. Mitchell brings over 15 years of commercial, operational, ground handling experience to the team. He has worked for airlines, airports, ground handlers in Canada, US, UK, and Europe, and also holds an honors diploma with aviation management. Gord Kenny has been director of service delivery of Central Region at CATSA, Canadian Air Transport Security Authority, for 4 years. His region of responsibility encompasses the province of Ontario, which includes Toronto Pearson, Ottawa International Airport. Prior to joining CATSA, Gord worked on the airline side of the industry with a focus on security and facilitation, while also working on management responsibility for ground operations related to procurement. And he has participated in several national and international working groups and advisory committees. And finally, Tom Stevens. Tom has recently joined Air Canada, leading the customer service experience, vision, and transformation roadmap, a core aspect of which is Air Canada's CX 2030 workstream, which includes the development of biometrics. Prior to Air Canada, Tom worked as part of the British Airways leadership team, leading the brand and customer experience team responsible for all aspects of customer experience design. Earlier in his time at British Airways, Tom spent around 5 years leading airport operations, including for BA's hub at Heathrow, during which time he led a significant rollout of the technology across the airport. Welcome, Mitch, Gord, and Tom. Today we aim to give you information and resources to support your travelers, practical and security considerations, and also communications and strategies for your travelers. We've experienced some very pivotal moments in travel. After 9/11, CATSA was created to focus on air transportation. Airlines stopped using paper tickets, started electronic tickets and electronic boarding passes around 2003. In 2018, airlines began removing the viewing screens for short-haul flights. Remember we used to watch that one television in the cabin and everyone had to watch the same thing? And that was probably when the last 10 rows were the smoking section. Remember that, anyone? Some people do. The young ones, they have no idea what we're talking about. Before the pandemic, 46% of passengers were willing to share their biometric data. My, how 1 year can make a difference. In 2020, 73% of passengers were willing to share their biometric data. And now, post-pandemic, there's a focus on health and welfare of passengers, which has catapulted technologies and many enhancements. The digital traveler of today demands immediate digital service. As soon as you arrive at the airport, your online check-in, your smart baggage kiosk, biometrics, virtual queuing, contactless fast track, pre-order retail, food, beverage, everything It's just, there's so much. And with that, just a word of caution, protect your personal information as much as possible. Be diligent using the airport Wi-Fi's or hiding those luggage labels, your phone screens, and your credit cards as you're running to get to your gate and you forget your card at the terminal as you get your Starbucks. So today we are going to just talk about biometrics, security, and other services. What is biometrics? Biometrics is use advanced sensors to recognize and identify an individual through physiological characteristics such as voice, facial recognition, or handprint. Tom, I'd like to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your roles and responsibilities. As well, when it comes to biometrics, how do the airlines engage with the airports when rolling out these trials?
Our partners with United and Lufthansa as well. Everybody is on a journey around biometrics, and that's really for a number of reasons. Firstly, biometrics actually drives up customer satisfaction. Generally, as an industry, you see customer satisfaction up 12 points when a customer uses the biometric contactless experience versus using the more traditional. It comes back to the point you just made around privacy and how we hold customers' data, or how the customer in fact remains in control of their data. And that's why you see really different solutions all around the world. And it may appear that things are going slowly here versus what you might find in the US or in parts of Europe, but it's because as airlines and then working with partners in security and in airports, we're juggling the different legislative arrangements and working in the particular market. So in terms of kind of the remit that sits with me now and where we've got to as a manager, for eligible customers, which speeds up that process. And the reason for the trial is because we're adopting a slightly different strategy, or a strategy that we have to adopt here in Canada, where we're making sure the customer owns their data. So just, if you let me just a couple of minutes on kind of biometrics, because all biometrics are not the same. So in terms of how biometrics work for Air Canada, you enroll on the mobile app. And what we're doing there is we're matching your biometric features with a document, a passport, or soon to be, or just about now, a driving license, something like that, so we can tie the two together. And this is a trial that we have, and we're running with support from Transport Canada, and we're doing check and balance along the way. The key part about this is that when we take your biometric information, it's being stored on your phone. It's not being stored on Air Canada servers or airport servers or anything like that. It's owned on your device. And then when you're flying at the moment through one of these trial gates in Vancouver or Toronto, or if you're lounge eligible, flying domestically from Toronto, you have to select that you want to share your biometric data with Air Canada, and it comes to us only for the period of your flight. It is deleted within 24 hours. So you own the data, and if you don't ever want to share the data with us, you don't click the box, and you can easily delete it from your device. So that's something that's really specific, and why our roadmap is slightly different maybe to the US. If you see what goes on in the US, particularly for international carriers, the US CBP, using their Traveller Verification Service, a TVS, anyone that's got a US passport or has entered the US, their biometrics have been captured, and the CBP are making that data available to airlines. So actually, when you travel through the US, you see people like Delta, but also international carriers, including BA, where I came from. They're using that data today that the US government holds to effectively run airline processes. That's what Canada is doing. This is why it's really tricky for us to join up the dots with the airports and with the various authorities at the airport, because it's all about who owns that piece of data, that piece of biometric information. and there's different solutions, and I think we'll get on to later probably how we're starting to tie that together. So hopefully that's a bit of background to biometrics.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. So we'll move into the security piece at the airport, which sometimes can be quite opposite as touchless. It's quite hands-on. So I will let Gord tell us a little bit about the roles and responsibilities that he takes, and when it comes to security, what sort of technology has been introduced.
Thank you, Jim. Is that on? Yeah, there we go. Holding it a little closer than I thought. Yeah, when we first had conversations about the topic of the panel and they said touchless, I think I did ask the question, do you know what we do? Right? But upon reflecting on it, I think there is a story to tell. And given the fact that we work at a travel continuum with airports and airlines, and our role as the security screening authority, so we don't do the border, we're doing the pre-board screening and the baggage screening to facilitate the secure departure of aircraft flights within Canada. There are elements where we don't want to see you. And if you've checked in and started your journey abroad in a country that's recognized through the One-Stop Security Program, we now have facilities in certain airports to be able to transit the customs process and not have to be rescreened. So we call that One-Stop Security, the International to Domestic Connections Program. So in that sense, completely touchless, because we don't see, which I think is a great story, and it makes us more efficient because we're seeing the people we have to see. Part of that, we now have to build a checkpoint in those areas to deal with the passengers that are arriving from non-OSS countries, but that's part of the coordination that we have with airport authorities and facilities managers in making sure that we're prepared to meet the needs of the industry and the traveling public. To the Vancouver trial on biometrics, the next phase of it, we have been approached a little bit on the screen. We're the screening authority. Transport Canada is the regulatory body that makes the rules and enforces those rules. So Transport Canada has given us the go-ahead to participate in this trial, or at least the fact-finding ahead of participation. And we are looking at leveraging what's happening at the boarding gate for the digital travel credential as you're moving through security. And what's important to us is making sure that it complements our existing processes. So it's not going to be on top of and an extra step beyond the scan that we already are doing to be able to register you and track you through our part of the system, and making sure that it complements the process. So we've just been brought to the table in the past couple of months on that, and look forward to what that looks like in the coming next phase of that. And the part I'd like to talk about is two things. One on risk-based security. So everybody here who's traveled through the States hears about pre-check and the wonderful things that offers members that are traveling through the airport. We've had trusted traveler lanes that are tied to the Nexus program in Canada for quite some time, but we have been trialing in Vancouver and Toronto enhancements to that program with the support of Transport Canada, and what it might mean for a risk-based security approach that means an even lighter touch. And we've trialed keeping your electronics in the bag if you've gone through Terminal 1 domestic on an Air Canada or Lynx flight lately. And we're expecting more in the coming weeks and months from Transport Canada on that front, so stay tuned, because we've got certain findings that we think we can move forward with for a more light touch, not completely touchless experience from the screening perspective. And I think the last technology piece that I'd touch upon is another trial that we embarked upon, this time in Ottawa, last summer, looking at computed topography scanning. So the CT technology that has come out in some TSA checkpoints in the US and various locations around the world. This is enhanced 3D imaging that allows us to do a more thorough analysis of an image to understand what threats might be in that bag. this is the gateway technology to some of the announcements that you've heard around the world about being able to keep your liquids and gels in the bag and getting rid of some of those restrictions that have to fit in your little 1 liter Ziploc bag that we've come to love or loathe, depending on your level of organization over the years. So the trial has been promising. We've seen it in some jurisdictions, and now we're working with Transport Canada on what that procurement and rollout will look like in the coming years. But it's certainly an exciting time to be working with partners in the industry and making sure that we're not only facilitating the recovery, which is where we're at today, but getting back to and exceeding the growth in travel that existed leading up to 2019. And the years ahead certainly look busy, which is a good thing.
Thanks very much, Gord. And Mitch, finally, all the other services that are contact technology, what sort of things can you tell us at Newport Aviation?
Thanks, Teresa. Can you answer me? Yeah, as Teresa mentioned, my name is Mitchell Cover. I'm the ops guy, you could say. I have a background in terminal operations, airline operations, and I was excited to come and speak because I can speak to kind of the background technology that's in airports that the general public doesn't necessarily see. So Newport's the proud owner and operator of the terminal. We're responsible for the facilities management, obviously the experience of passengers transitioning through the airport, and obviously all of the apron management and gating that we do with the aircraft coming into the gates. I was hoping to speak to some of the technology that we utilize at Billy Bishop. For our gating, we utilize a system. It's a SCADA-based driven program called AMS. It's a very easy airport management system, and it assists us to bring in the aircraft into the gates for us. So it's a very seamless process. It links between the carriers putting their information into another system called OAG, which then links into AMS, which then links into the FIDS. Why is that important to kind of understand the process and the flow of that? Is because if a passenger is transitioning through the airport and they're looking at the FIDS screen, and that FIDS screen doesn't have the accurate information from our agents and through the carriers, then they're either going to be late or miss the flights and stuff. So there's a lot of technology in the background that's implemented. Another piece of technology that we utilize for a variety of different reasons is a Seattle-based company called Zovis. If you're ever transiting through the airport, you'll see these black monitors on the top of the screen, the top of the ceilings in the airport. That's Zovis. Zovis is a tool that we utilize for lounge capacity, for monitoring flows through the airport of passengers and employees. We're actually able to pinpoint certain areas within the airport and see how many people are in those areas. As the terminal operator, I'm responsible for the capacity that's in our lounge and ensuring that it doesn't breach the fire and stuff like that. So like I said, as a joke, I'm the ops guy trying to ensure that everything kind of runs smoothly. We utilize Zovis to make sure that, like I said, we're not going for capacity. We can do data trending, so we can actually go back to the carriers at the airport and say, over this quarterly period, your customers have waited an X amount of time to be checked in, or even to process through security. How long did they wait in the lounge? How long did they wait to board the aircraft? All that kind of stuff. So it's really useful data for us to then go back to the carriers to say, here's the information that we've had and recorded, and then they can take that data and decide if they want to change anything and stuff like that. So I manage that, as well as some other tech. Obviously, we have a lot of tech in regards to baggage transitioning through an airport and all that kind of stuff as well. I think that's about it, really. At the airport, I was excited to talk about Touchless because obviously the pandemic really emphasized that passengers don't want to, even our onboard service in an airline, they don't want the meals to be handed to them and stuff like that. So we really had to adapt and kind of curve that. So it's been interesting. I worked in Ottawa prior to this position and managing teams through the pandemic and seeing how the new way of how our passengers interact with check-in agents and ramp staff and stuff. They want their boarding passes on their hand. They want to be able to transition through security quickly. They want to be able to potentially board a plane without having to speak to somebody, which is exciting to hear about the trials. This is the first time I heard about the trials in Vancouver and Toronto. So there's some exciting things coming in the future, so looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mitch. We've talked about biometrics, security, and other services. Now, as a team or the whole ecosystem within the airport, how do you work together to create these seamless environments?
Okay, so shall I start that one and we'll jump in. So I think we've touched on it a few times, but when you're going for that biometric journey, we're not talking about trying just to do a departure gate. To that point, to the point we discussed earlier, actually we did a biometric pathway, so how do you get from curb to aircraft and then back off the other end without having to get out your passport, without having to get out your boarding card. So this effort requires so much collaboration and for us as an airline at each individual airport that we're operating at. There is some central stuff we obviously do with some of the regulatory authorities and people that work across multiple, but really we're talking about each individual airport either as airline-owned technology or common use technology and joining that up. So it's a huge collaborative piece of work, and I think it's going well so far, and we should hopefully see some more of that join up as we discuss in things like Vancouver starting to come together soon.
We'll just keep going on the continuum, I suppose. A couple of themes that have popped up when we're talking that Mitchell had said about passengers seeing as few people as possible in their travel journey. So it's almost in one sense dehumanized, but I don't think that negatively. But it's an interesting challenge for the screening authority from the CATSA perspective, because in a lot of cases, our screening officers are the first people that a traveler will encounter if they've done a self-serve bag drop and checked in at home. If they've done everything they're supposed to do in the most cost-effective manner, then they're seeing us first. That sometimes means that we're answering questions that are outside of our mandate and scope of authority, but trying to deliver the best customer service possible and directing people where they need to go, and hopefully that question can be answered when they're through our process and we're not having to send them back upstream. Mitchell talked a lot about data and SOVIS, and we see that in several airports. We consume some of that data because if we are causing a bottleneck at a checkpoint where people are trying to get into the secure area to not only depart their flights, but also spend money in the terminal, which is a reality for non-aeronautical revenue in the airport environment, they will let us know. And obviously we've got a service level standard where we want to screen people, 85% of people within 15 minutes or less. Nationally last year, despite all the challenges that were encountered with capacity about a year ago now, with the traffic roaring back, nationally on an annualized basis, we did meet that service standard. So now the question is, where is that going? And we're excited to be recipients of more funding from the government on raising that service level going forward and what that looks like as we raise the bar toward next year. But when you talk about data, the entire aviation ecosystem has more of a focus right now on using data, collecting data, sharing data, forecasting data, in order for you to get the best for your passengers. We need to know so that we're prepared at the right time, so that the capacity is aligned with demand, and that the airport authorities are the ones and the terminal managers that are sharing that information, because from our perspective, going to 40, 50 different airlines, depending on a large airport or a handful at a smaller facility, is the difference between success and failure for us.
To add to Gord's point, I really agree in regards to the word collaboration. So being an ops person, I am responsible to collaborate with the carriers, the security screening point, the port authority, airport authorities, and trying to link it all together. And then come into this about the technology piece of it. Technology assists and aids to all of that. In a conversation in preparation for this, it was my mom actually, but she wanted to say that to not forget about the, say, aging population that doesn't necessarily know how to use the technology. So I thought I would just kind of sprinkle that in there as well, because she had added that in there, that not everybody will, take on the technology that is coming, and it is to not forget that there's a generation out there that still require that face-to-face, which links into your point I found about the losing that human touch, right? Like there's still people in the world, like I'm old school, I still like to call somebody and ask them. So to not forget that, I think that the
It's a great point, Chris. So finally, what do you think the evolution of the airport experience is going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years?
It probably just builds on your point there, because there's been talk around creating a dark airport, which basically means you come to the airport and you don't see anybody and it's all self-service all the way through. My personal view, and the view of the big airlines that we're part of, is that's not the way forward. Technology should enable choice, and that's probably your point, right? So we need to free up agents from doing transactional activities that are not adding a lot of value and that actually a lot of customers don't need, so they can revert to actually giving true empathetic customer experience. And that's the journey that you'll see Air Canada going on and other airlines going on. And it's quite a tough journey, because we're moving away from an agent that we just want to scan boarding cards or swipe passports, and saying, no, don't do that anymore. We want you out there talking to our customers, engaging, delivering that real hospitality. So I think what you'll see over time is a joined up experience to start with on the tech, so we get to an end-to-end journey. We start to get away from having this whole collection of apps, and we try and join up the proposition. But I also genuinely believe you will now see more staff, or the same staff, but actually out from behind a desk, walking around talking and engaging. That's the vision certainly that we're going after, and as part of that CX 2030 transformation described at the beginning.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of commonalities there with what we'd expect to see. You're certainly going to see more reliance on technology in the screening world. If you look back to where we were 20 years ago, things are fundamentally different. Things have evolved and will continue to evolve. The next level of screening technologies 20 years from now may look vastly different than we see today. Our challenge is doing what we need to do with a growing air traffic population in a footprint that we're told can't grow. So we can't throw more screening lanes because airports don't have the real estate to give it to us. Everything that is described from, I think Mitchell said all the things behind the scenes, and Tom was talking about all the facilitating activities of individuals. There's a miles and miles of complex networks of baggage systems that connect up to facilitate the journey of baggage alone. Moving sidewalks in the larger airports, and elevators, and moving pieces, and trains, and it is a vastly complex and amazing ecosystem, and makes it what's interesting to go into work every day. But individuals facilitating the people that need assistance is key. If you're educated and your constituents are educated and doing all of that, and knowing, I go if I'm flying use commerce to be a customs with global entry, and I can cut 45 minutes off my connection time and know that I can make my flight. If you've done it and you're educated, you can be facilitated to the process. But the point on accessibility is not everybody can, and not everybody can do it on their own. And it's a major focus for us. Our 3 mandated lanes that we have are family special needs first, the regular general population lane, and the trusted traveler product. Those are the only 3 things that we're mandated by the government to get. Some airports have had your credit card lane and your QCHS.
To tie back to Tom McCord's point, I do believe that the next 5 to 10 years will be a challenge in regards to the rebound that we're still experiencing in the industry. And to Tom's original point, the first point of providing the customer service, we can't forget that. I feel, will rebound and get back to where we were pre-pandemic 2019 levels by being able to Gord's point, getting out in front of the passenger, not just standard boarding pass seat later. I think the pandemic, in regards to managing staff, has kind of caused some issues, because there's unfortunately employees out there that don't want to do the frontline job, and if they do, then their expectations salary-wise is a little high, or higher than it used to be. So as an airport manager and an ops manager, whenever I manage large teams, I was always trying to instill kind of what Tom said about that customer service approach, getting out there, not shaking some touchless, but interacting with people, and providing that level of customer service, right? And not forgetting the human element to all of this. I think that our industry question is obviously where it's going to evolve in the next 5 to 10 years. I think I'm answering in the sense that for us to continue that evolution, we can't forget what got us to that point. As we mentioned, that technology is an assistance to get there. So yeah, as long as we tie it all together.
Thanks, everyone. So we just wanted to open it up for a few minutes for a Q&A, if anyone has any questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Darren.
I had a question.
Oh.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Testing. Okay, it works. So the question is, going through CATSA is, it seems to tell you to get to the airport 3 hours before, and sure enough, you get there, and the lineup is massive and stuff like that. But the question is, with regards to the liquids, you're allowed 100 milliliters, and it has to fit in those baggies and stuff like that. And of course, you can go through and get waters or whatever after. When are they getting rid of it? And number two is, I bought some really expensive sunscreen. And it was a little over, and I used some of it. I said, there's only 100 milliliters left in it. Does it matter what the tube size is, or can you get away with it if it? Is there anybody willing to make a judgment call, or they're just? I'm assuming they're super strict, but is there a judgment call? When are they getting rid of these 100 milliliters?
Well, the answer on getting rid of it is indelibly tied to CT and the onboarding of that technology. And we're, as I said, we've done a trial. We have but so we have those deployed, and so it's going to be deployment of that technology to facilitate. I was present at a conference where the person who came up with that, the 311 was a TSA conference, and after the liquids plot in 2006, they locked themselves in a Navy research lab for a weekend, and I can swear, blew shit up with varying degrees of power. And it was found to be like the things like TATP and improvised explosives that were possible. So we tend to get away from the judgment. We do allow you to have your own bag, but the people that will say, well, this bag is the same as the bag you're offering, and it's 3 times the size and made out of other materials. It is ridiculously difficult for a screening officer on the line to make that assessment, and it does put them in a difficult position. But we're trying to improve our messaging, and somebody had talked about choice, and obviously having choice and options is critical. We know that it's probably the biggest bone of contention and frustration that the traveling public has, but at this point it's still a necessary precaution that we need to take to protect the ecosystem.
So when it comes to consistency across Canada and the airports, is there a plan that if I know I'm going to go depart out of Calgary, I'm going to have an access lane, or it's just very inconsistent. I think Vancouver has an access lane that's open from about 12 to 12:15 every day. Halifax, their lane is a mile long, and sometimes it's go to your station, get your bins, do it yourself. Sometimes it's put in a long row. Is there any plan to get some more consistency?
Well, the 2 offerings we have, sorry, on a lane perspective are the Catalyst lane, which is kind of that parallel as multiple stations, jump ahead of somebody who might be taking a little bit more time. Those tend to move more quickly, but the throughput of those lanes is double a regular lane. So if traffic's not that busy and there are multiple concourses operating, we're working with airport authorities to identify where and when we need to be open. And we need the critical mass of trusted travelers to be able to offer that nexus lane at all hours. Now, what I would say is stay tuned. We're working on more imminent messaging on some of that consistent product and what is expected from a trusted configuration depending on the sector you're flying out of. Toronto Terminal 1 has a similar number. Even Calgary has multiple ways to get into the same lounge. So it's a simpler question in a small airport, but the layouts of these airports can be pretty complex, which drives the level of diffusion. But we hear the concern. We're certainly looking to get consistency along with Transport Canada and then share with our airport and airline partners so that we're all on the same page and using the same phraseology as well.
So I was a question screening. Yeah. So we enter the screening process, we are done manually. And if you're wearing a belt buckle by mistake, you're then sent forward to the automatic screening system. Won't it be more sensible to just get into the automatic screening system than get screened manually and faster?